There was a time when I believed my life was perfect. My name is Daniel, and I met my wife Emma when we were still teenagers. I was only a sophomore in high school, while she was already a senior. To most people, the age difference was not a big deal, but to me, it felt exciting. Emma was beautiful. Not just beautiful in appearance, but in the way she carried herself. She was confident, smart, and mature. While other girls my age spent their weekends gossiping about classmates, Emma talked about college, future goals, and dreams. I felt lucky every time she chose to spend time with me. When my friends found out I was dating a senior, they couldn't believe it. "You must be the luckiest guy in school," one of them told me. At the time, I agreed. Whenever Emma held my hand in the hallway, I felt proud. Whenever she smiled at me, I felt like I could conquer the world. She made me feel special. As our relationship grew stronger, she became more than just a girlfriend. She became my best friend. Emma was patient with me. When I struggled with homework, she helped me study. When I felt nervous about my future, she encouraged me. And when it was finally time for me to learn how to drive, she was the one sitting in the passenger seat, calmly teaching me. I still remember those afternoons, the warm sunlight, the empty parking lots, the way she laughed whenever I accidentally hit the brakes too hard. "Relax," she would say with a smile. "You drive like the car is trying to kill you." Her laughter always made me feel better. For a while, everything seemed perfect. But life rarely stays simple. Soon, Emma graduated from high school and left for college. The day she packed her things was one of the hardest days of my life.
I tried to act strong. I hugged her. I smiled. I told her I was happy for her. But inside, I felt terrified. For the first time since we started dating, she would be far away, far from me, far from our hometown, far from everything familiar. The distance wasn't impossible. The college was only a few hours away. But to me, it felt like another world. The first few weeks were difficult. I missed her constantly. Every morning I checked my phone, hoping to see a message from her. Every night I waited for her calls. Sometimes she was busy studying. Sometimes she was with friends. Sometimes she simply fell asleep before she could reply. I knew these things were normal. College was demanding. She had responsibilities. She had a life. But my mind didn't see it that way. Every delayed text felt like rejection. Every missed call felt like abandonment. The more I worried, the worse it became. Questions started filling my head. What if she meets someone else? What if she realizes she can do better than me? What if she stops loving me? The thoughts never stopped. I hated them. I knew they were irrational, but they stayed anyway. Sometimes I would stare at my phone for hours. Sometimes I would read our old messages over and over again, looking for proof, looking for reassurance, looking for anything that would calm my fears. Yet nothing worked.
The distance slowly changed me. I became anxious, insecure, obsessive. I started needing constant reassurance from her. Do you still love me? When are you coming home? Are you sure everything is okay? At first, Emma answered patiently. She always reassured me. She always tried to make me feel better. But as months passed, I noticed a change. Not in her love, in her exhaustion. She sounded tired. Not angry, just tired. And that scared me even more. Because if Emma became tired of me, what would happen next? The fear followed me everywhere, into classrooms, into restaurants, into bed at night. I could never escape it. 2 years passed like this. 2 long years. Then finally, I graduated. By that point, Emma and I had survived something many relationships couldn't survive: distance. We were still together, still in love, still planning a future. Soon after, we moved into our first apartment together. It wasn't large. The furniture was cheap. The walls were plain. But to me, it felt like a palace, because Emma was there. Every morning, I woke up beside her. Every evening, I came home to her. The fear that had haunted me for years finally began to disappear. Or at least, that's what I thought. One evening, while we sat together on our small balcony watching the sunset, I reached into my pocket. My heart was pounding. My hands were shaking. Emma noticed immediately. "Daniel?" I smiled nervously. Then I got down on one knee. Her eyes widened. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The world seemed to stand still. Then I asked the question I had been waiting years to ask. "Emma, will you marry me?" Tears immediately filled her eyes. She covered her mouth. Then she nodded. "Yes." The moment she said that single word, it felt like every fear inside me disappeared. I believed everything would be different now. I believed marriage would solve my insecurities. I believed nothing could ever separate us again. I had no idea how wrong I was. Because some fears don't disappear. They simply wait in the darkness. And mine were about to return stronger than ever. At first, married life felt wonderful. Emma and I settled into our little apartment and began building a life together. We developed routines. Every morning, she made coffee while I prepared breakfast. Every evening, we ate dinner together and talked about our day. On weekends, we would walk through the city, visit small shops, or simply stay home watching movies. To anyone looking from the outside, we probably seemed happy. Maybe we were, at least for a while. But happiness has a strange way of exposing the things hidden deep inside us. The closer Emma and I became, the more terrified I became of losing her. It didn't make sense. She was my wife now. She had chosen me. She had promised to spend her life with me. Yet my mind refused to believe it. Whenever she came home later than expected, I worried. Whenever she spent time on her phone, I wondered who she was talking to. Whenever she mentioned a coworker, my imagination immediately created stories that probably weren't true. I hated myself for it. I truly did. I knew my thoughts were irrational. I knew Emma had never given me a reason to doubt her, but knowing something and believing it are two different things. One night, while we were eating dinner, Emma casually mentioned a male coworker named Ryan. "Ryan helped me finish a project today," she said. I immediately felt a knot form in my stomach. "Ryan?" I asked. She nodded. "Yeah, he's been helping everyone lately." I forced a smile, but inside, my thoughts were already racing. How old was he? Was he attractive? Did she enjoy spending time with him? Did he make her laugh? The questions kept coming. That night, I barely slept. Emma slept peacefully beside me while I stared at the ceiling,
listening to the sound of her breathing, fighting battles that existed only inside my own head. The next morning, I apologized. Emma smiled gently. "You don't have to apologize every day, Daniel." Her words hurt more than she realized, because she was right. I apologized constantly for my jealousy, for my insecurity, for my overthinking. The problem was that apologies never fixed anything. The cycle always repeated. Weeks turned into months. Months turned into years, and slowly our marriage began to change. The arguments became more frequent. The smiles became less common. Sometimes Emma looked exhausted before I had even said a word. One evening, I found her sitting alone on the balcony. She was watching the city lights in silence. Normally, she loved quiet moments, but this felt different. There was sadness in her eyes. I sat beside her. "Everything okay?" I asked. She hesitated. Then she nodded. "Just tired." I wanted to believe her, but something felt wrong. For the first time in our relationship, I felt distance growing between us. Not physical distance, emotional distance. And that scared me more than anything. A few months later, Emma started spending more time with her friends. At least, that's what she told me. Girls' nights, dinner outings, weekend gatherings. I told myself it was healthy, normal. People needed friendships outside their marriage. But every time she left the apartment, anxiety followed her out the door. I checked my phone constantly. I watched the clock. I counted the hours until she returned. One Friday evening, she told me she was going out with her friends. "We'll probably be home around 8, she said. I nodded. "Okay." She smiled. "Thank you." The word bothered me. Thank you? Why was she thanking me? She was my wife.
She shouldn't need permission to see her friends. Yet somehow, over the years, our relationship had slowly changed. Without realizing it, I had started controlling things. Not openly, not aggressively, just little things, small rules, small expectations, small restrictions. Things that felt reasonable to me. things that probably didn't feel reasonable to her. When she left that night, the apartment felt unusually quiet. I tried watching television. I tried reading. I tried playing games. Nothing distracted me. My thoughts kept returning to Emma. Where was she? Who was she with? What was she doing? I checked my phone. No messages. I checked again 10 minutes later. Still nothing. By 7 o'clock, I was pacing through the apartment. By 7:30, I had already imagined dozens of worst-case scenarios. Then, at exactly 7:45, my phone buzzed. A text message. Emma. Running a little late. Be home soon, heart. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt angry. I didn't know why. Maybe because she wasn't home. Maybe because I felt powerless. Maybe because I hated how much control my fears had over me. When Emma finally walked through the door, she looked happy, relaxed, like she'd actually enjoyed herself. And for some reason, that irritated me. "You're late," I said. Her smile faded immediately. "I texted you." "Still late." Emma sighed. A small sigh, but it felt like a knife. Because it wasn't the sigh of someone surprised. It was the sigh of someone tired of having the same argument again and again and again. That night we fought. Not loudly, not dramatically, just another exhausting conversation that ended with silence. The worst kind of silence. The kind where two people sit in the same room but feel miles apart. After Emma fell asleep, I remained awake, staring into the darkness, listening to the rain outside, wondering why everything felt so different, wondering why I couldn't simply trust the woman I loved, wondering why I always felt afraid. Eventually, I got out of bed and walked into the living room. The apartment was dark, quiet, empty. I wandered aimlessly through the rooms. Then my eyes landed on something sitting on top of Emma's vanity. A small notebook, black cover, worn edges. I had seen it before, many times, but I had never opened it. Emma always kept it private, a journal, a diary. At first, I looked away. Everyone deserved privacy, even spouses, especially spouses. But then curiosity appeared, a dangerous curiosity, the kind that whispers terrible ideas into your ear. I stared at the notebook. Then I looked toward the bedroom. Emma was asleep. She would never know. Just one page, just one quick look, nothing more. My hand slowly reached toward the diary, and before I could stop myself, I opened it. What I found inside would change everything. For a few seconds, I simply stared at the open diary. The pages were filled with Emma's neat handwriting. Part of me wanted to close it immediately, to put it back exactly where I found it, to respect her privacy. But another part of me, the fearful, insecure part, needed answers. I convinced myself that I wasn't doing anything wrong. I told myself I was her husband. I told myself that if there was a problem in our marriage, I had a right to know. So I began reading.
The first few pages seemed harmless. Emma wrote about work. She wrote about her friends. She wrote about everyday frustrations and small victories. Nothing unusual, nothing alarming. I almost felt relieved. Then I turned another page, and another, and another. Slowly the subject began to change. The entries became more personal, more emotional, more honest. And with every page, a heavy feeling started growing inside my chest. One entry described an argument we had months ago. I remembered it clearly. At least, I thought I did. In my memory, it had been a simple disagreement, a small misunderstanding. But in Emma's diary, it looked very different. She described feeling trapped, exhausted, constantly questioned, constantly monitored. I frowned as I read. That wasn't fair, was it? I kept reading. The next entry was worse. Emma wrote about how nervous she felt whenever she wanted to spend time with her friends. She explained how she carefully chose her words before asking me, how she worried about upsetting me, how she often canceled plans simply to avoid another argument. I stared at the page. My stomach tightened. That couldn't be true, could it? I never forced her to stay home. I never physically stopped her. I simply wanted to know where she was going, who she was with, when she would be back. Was that really so unreasonable? The diary seemed to think so. Page after page painted a version of me that I barely recognized, a version that frightened me, a version I didn't want to believe existed. Still, I continued reading. I couldn't stop. Each sentence felt like another piece of broken glass. Painful, yet impossible to look away from. One entry described a girls' night she attended several months earlier. I remembered that night. I remembered how anxious I had been. How many times I checked my phone. How upset I became when she arrived home later than expected. In my memory, I had simply been worried about her safety, but Emma described it differently. She wrote that she felt guilty the entire evening, that she couldn't enjoy herself because she knew an argument was waiting for her at home. My hands tightened around the diary. I didn't like what I was reading, not because it was insulting, because part of me feared it might be true. I turned another page. Then another. The words became harder to read, not because of the handwriting, because of what they said. Emma wrote about feeling lonely. Lonely. The word hit me harder than anything else. How could she feel lonely? We lived together. We ate together. We slept in the same bed every night. I loved her more than anything. Wasn't that enough? Apparently not. According to her diary,
my love felt heavy, smothering, overwhelming. She described feeling responsible for my emotions, responsible for my fears, responsible for my happiness. Every time I felt insecure, she felt obligated to fix it. Every time I doubted her, she felt forced to defend herself. Reading those words made my chest ache. Because I never wanted that. I never wanted her to feel burdened by me. I only wanted reassurance. I only wanted to feel loved. But maybe there was a difference. Maybe my need for reassurance had become something else.
Something unhealthy, something destructive. I shook my head. No, the diary was exaggerating. It had to be. People write dramatic things when they're emotional. Everyone knows that. I continued reading. Then I reached an entry dated only 3 weeks earlier. The moment I started reading, my heart began pounding. Emma wrote about our marriage, not the good parts, not the happy memories, the struggles, the fear, the exhaustion. She wrote that she didn't recognize herself anymore. She wrote that she felt like she was constantly walking on eggshells, carefully choosing every word, carefully managing every conversation, trying to avoid triggering another argument. I swallowed hard. My throat felt dry. The room suddenly felt warmer, smaller. The words blurred for a moment as my eyes moved across the page. Then I saw something that made my stomach drop. A single sentence. A sentence I wished I had never read. Sometimes I think about leaving. I froze. The world seemed to stop. I read it again and again and again. The words never changed. Sometimes I think about leaving. Leaving. The word echoed inside my head. After everything we had been through, after all the years together, after all the sacrifices, she wanted to leave? I quickly continued reading, desperate for context, desperate for something that would make it hurt less. Instead, things became worse, much worse. Emma wrote about feeling trapped. She wrote about feeling afraid of my reactions, afraid of my anger, afraid of my jealousy, afraid of my emotional outbursts. Then I reached a page filled with short descriptions, single words, simple labels, like she was trying to understand her feelings, or maybe understand me. I stared at them, one after another. Paranoid. My jaw tightened. Possessive. My chest burned. Then my eyes landed on the final word. The word that shattered something inside me. Terrifying. I couldn't breathe. Terrifying? Me? The same boy who had loved her since high school? The same man who worked overtime to support our life together? The same husband who devoted every part of himself to her? How could she possibly see me that way? I slammed the diary shut. The sound echoed through the apartment. For several moments, I simply sat there, breathing heavily, trying to process what I had just read. My thoughts spiraled in every direction. Anger, confusion, sadness, disbelief, all mixing together. Part of me wanted to cry. Part of me wanted to scream.
Part of me wanted to wake Emma up and demand answers, but another part of me felt something far more dangerous: betrayal. Deep, painful betrayal. I looked around the silent apartment, at the furniture we bought together, at the wedding photos hanging on the wall, at the life we had built. Had it all been a lie? Had she secretly hated me this entire time? Had every smile been fake, every "I love you" dishonest? The questions consumed me. Minutes passed, maybe an hour. I wasn't sure. I just sat there, staring into space, lost in thoughts darker than I had ever experienced before. Then suddenly, I heard movement behind me, a soft sound, a familiar voice, shaking, nervous, almost frightened. "Honey?" I slowly turned around. Emma stood in the hallway, her face pale, her eyes fixed on the diary sitting in front of me. And in that moment, she knew. She knew exactly what I had read.
For several seconds, neither of us spoke. The silence felt unbearable. Then Emma quietly asked, "Why are you sitting at my vanity?" And for the first time in our entire relationship, I didn't know how to answer. Emma stood in the hallway, frozen. Her face had gone pale, like all color had drained from her body the moment she saw the diary in my hands. The silence between us was heavy, uncomfortable, almost unbearable. I could feel my heartbeat in my ears, slow, loud, unsteady. Emma took one step forward, then stopped. Her eyes never left the diary. "Daniel," she said quietly. Just my name, nothing else, but the way she said it carried everything. Fear, shock, and something worse: resignation. I slowly stood up. The diary was still in my hand. I started, but no words came out properly. My mind was a mess, a storm of anger, confusion, and pain. I wanted to understand, I finally said. Emma didn't respond immediately. She looked at the diary again, then at me. Her voice was soft, too soft, like she was afraid of breaking something already shattered. "You read it," she said. It wasn't a question, it was a confirmation. I nodded, a single small movement, and the moment I did, something in her expression changed. Not anger, not shock, just tiredness, deep exhaustion.
The kind that comes after holding something inside for too long. Emma walked slowly into the room. Each step felt heavy, careful, like she was walking toward something she had been avoiding for a long time. She stopped a few feet away from me. "I never wanted you to see that," she said. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I didn't know what else to do. "Then why write it?" I asked. My voice was sharper than I intended. Emma flinched slightly. Then she lowered her eyes. "I needed somewhere to put my thoughts," she said quietly. "Somewhere safe. Somewhere I could be honest without starting another argument.
Those words hit me harder than I expected. Another argument, I repeated. My chest tightened. So you think I'm just someone you fight with? Emma shook her head quickly. No, that's not what I meant. But her hesitation said everything. I took a step closer. My emotions were building now. I loved you. I still love you. I did everything for you. Everything. My voice cracked slightly. I gave you this life, this home. I trusted you. Emma's eyes filled with tears. I know, she whispered, but it didn't feel like enough. It didn't feel like anything. I held up the diary. These words don't sound like someone who feels loved. They sound like someone who feels trapped. Emma closed her eyes. For a moment she didn't speak. When she finally did, her voice was barely above a whisper. I didn't feel trapped because I didn't love you, she said. I froze. She continued. I felt trapped because I didn't know how to make things better anymore. Silence. The air between us felt colder now. Emma sat down slowly on the edge of the bed. Her hands were trembling.
I tried, Daniel, she said. I really tried. I tried to reassure you. I tried to be patient. I tried to understand your fears. She looked up at me. Her eyes were red now. But no matter what I did, it was never enough. My throat tightened. That's not true, I said immediately. But even as I said it, I wasn't fully sure. Emma wiped her eyes. Every time I went out, she said, I had to explain everything in detail. Every time I laughed at a message on my phone, I felt guilty. Every time I came home a little late, I knew what was coming. Her voice started shaking. Not because you were violent, she added quickly, but because I could feel how anxious you were becoming and how that anxiety turned into anger. I looked away. Something inside me twisted. Emma stood up again. This isn't about hate, she said softly. It never was. She walked a little closer. I love you, she said. The words should have comforted me, but they didn't, because of what came next. But love shouldn't feel like fear. Silence. That sentence stayed in the air longer than anything else. I felt something inside me break. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, like something finally giving up after holding on for too long. I looked at her, really looked at her. She wasn't angry, she wasn't cruel, she wasn't enjoying this. She looked sad and tired, like someone who had carried too much for too long. I sat down slowly. My hands were shaking now. So what now? I asked quietly. Emma didn't answer right away. She looked at the floor, then at the diary, then at me. I don't know, she said honestly. And that honesty hurt more than anything, because for the first time there was no plan, no reassurance, no easy fix. Just reality, heavy and unavoidable. We stayed like that for a long time.
Two people in the same room, connected by years of love, but separated by something deeper than distance.
understanding. Finally, Emma spoke again. "I don't want to lose you," she said. Her voice broke slightly. "But I also can't keep living like this." I closed my eyes. For a moment, I saw everything. Our first meeting, her laughter when she taught me to drive, the apartment we built, the nights we argued, the diary, the words, paranoid, possessive, terrifying. All of it came crashing together. And suddenly I understood something I had refused to see for a long time. Love alone is not always enough. Not when fear becomes part of it. Not when trust slowly disappears. Not when two people start hurting each other without meaning to. I opened my eyes. Emma was still waiting for me to say something, anything. But I realized something else. There was nothing left to say in that moment. Not because the story was over, but because this was the moment everything had to change, one way or another. I exhaled slowly, and for the first time in years, I didn't ask for reassurance. I didn't accuse. I didn't argue. I simply said, "I don't want to hurt you anymore." Emma closed her eyes. A single tear fell down her cheek, not from fear this time, but from relief. And in that quiet moment, we both understood the truth. This wasn't the end of love, but it was the end of how we had been loving each other. The beginning of something uncertain, but maybe, finally, something honest.